Pleasure to be here. Yeah. I'm representing an organization which is called Architecture Fund, and among other projects, we have the one you see in the chunky title there. It's called Traveling Architecture Workshop, and I'm a co-organizer of this one. I've been volunteering for a few years, and then last year I became a part of the organizers team, so that's what we'll be talking about. I'm glad to see some faces from who were in the project from the very beginning, and some other familiar faces also. So first of all, for those who are not that familiar, what is it? So as the chunky title says, this is a project that teams of artists and architects go to a very small towns, or even I could say villages of Lithuania, have less than 1,000 inhabitants, and we do create public spaces with children there. And a typical view that you would see if you come in the middle of the process, like a bunch of youngsters and a bunch of architects, young artists working on something. It's quite hard yet to imagine what it's going to be, but yeah, that's what you would see. And to begin with, actually the success of this project is people and our teams. They are the ones going to the villages and towns and working with children and also fostering communities. So it began as an initiative, as the title suggests, as an architect's initiative. It used to be architects and other volunteers going to the villages, but recently, a few years ago, we decided to expand and to introduce more of an interdisciplinary approach, which means that we began involving different layers, which would be artists. Last year, we tried to involve visual artists, and this year we have a plan to try and attract performance artists to help with the process, with engaging the community and the children. Also, while the shifting only purely from architectural projects, we also trying to involve people who have experience working with children, so to say. I don't know, they have maybe worked in camps, or they work in schools, or they just like children and get along well, because that helps for the process beautifully. And one more thing which we are trying to include is some sort of research. That's why last year there was a young student of sociology, and she went mostly to almost all the towns. And she is in the process of writing her bachelor degree right now, which is called like a portrait of children in like rural Lithuania or something like that. And there's also other volunteers, of course, who are maybe drawn by the idea, or architecture students, and the team consists of about 7 or 8 people, and they spend quite some time in the villages. It's 5 days in total, and as I said, while trying to understand like what's the most important to the project, like is it tools, because we have like a bus like consisting like which has inside like a big tent. We come to the town, we put up the tent, and we have lots of tools. We show the tools to the kids, and I'll mention that in the process. But the most important thing actually is the people, because we are very lucky. I'm very glad we have wonderful volunteers who, I don't know, it's like, it may sound naive, but they put all their heart in it, and I think that's one of the successes of the project, because we have to talk a lot with them. We talk with them a lot about how to engage with the community, how to engage with the children, and how to, I don't know, diminish your own ego for the sake of the purpose. And, I want to show you a short video. Last like short media stories about every village I could show you afterwards, but I want to show one of them from Milošaičiai, which is a small town in Žemaitija district of Lithuania.
Bet kokia situacija lengviausia yra, kai tu daug šnekiesi ir stengiasi vienas kitą išklausyti.
Ką dažnai tik objektą pastatyti, yra tie visi vaikai, kurių mūsų komanda yra 40 beveik, kurie yra ten nuo 5 metukų, gal net dar jaunesnių yra, iki ten 20 ir su jais mokėti, būti, dirbti, jiems kažkokias užduotis padėti įvykdyti, tai reikia visų. Perdažom visą amfiteatrą tokį mini, kurį miestelio bendruomenių seniau buvo pastatę. Ir čia bandysim kažkaip apjungti spalvingai spalvomis, medžiagomis tas dvi erdves. Ir kad tokia jaukesnė, tiesiog vaikams taptų tas pakelis kaip galimybės laik susiburti.
Štai manęs mato stoginės rėmus jau ir į ją atsirenda dar tokia viena pakrypusi plokštuma, kur jie galės laipioti. Jo, greitai, o gal tu nori pas arkliuką Paulių nubėgti, ką? Ja, varyk. Aišku, mes nesam konstruktoriai kažkokie dideli, tai mes nusipaišėm su markeriu ant lentos, kurios dabar nesimato. Tai, ką mes norim matyti, tiesiog tada visi sustojam ir demokratiškai bandom nuspręsti, kaip tas daiktas gali stovėti. Tai atsirado, kad turi būti kolonas, kad mes kuo mažiau į medį įsigręžtumėm. Ant kolonų kažkokia konstrukcija turi atsirasti. Kaip ta konstrukcija atrodo, mes visi susėdam, pasibraižom, visiems tinka.
Smagu veikla, nes čia nieks nevyks ir smagu susirinkti tuos kaipus ir mes kažko darom daryti. Aš jaučiu, kad pasidaryti šitas laikas labai praeina. Aš pati praturtėju, aš kažką galiu tuo, ką aš moku pasidalinti.
Didesnieji, tai mus, aišku, mokina žemaitiškai, čia kas be ko.
Reikia porą dienų, kad suprasti jų tą kalbėjimą ir man tai yra taip gražu, aš negaliu, aš tai... Jie kažkaip po to persijungia ir galbūt su mumis literatūriškai. Tai aš jau prašydavau, sakau, tai kalbėkit, prašau žemaitiškai, nes aš pati ten stengiuosi išmokti,
Kad geri prisiminimai kaip faktas, žemaičių kalbos šiek tiek išliks žinoma. Ir turbūt noras gal kitais metais dalyvautis, pasakius, labai smagu toks pusiau skautiška stovykla, ten mes ant grindų miegam, čia su vaikais visą dieną ariam, bet tikrai verta. Labai gera girdėti jų žodžius, kai ypač vakare šnekam, kaip jiem diena sekėsi ir jie pasisako, kad tas patiko, tas buvo labai fainai.
Galimybė pabūti tokioj džiaugsmo šventėj, kažkokioj kitoj bendruomeniai, pažinta bendruomenė, tai yra turbūt didžiausia kado dovana.
Yeah, so some impressions from the people who were in the in one of the cities, and I will just quickly run through the process. How are we doing that? So first of all, we go to the excursion, and everything happens only with the children. We exclude the adults because as working with the children is very demanding, and they just close up if adults are present. Yeah, so we go to excursion, we pick a place, and then we brainstorm ideas for the place, and we pick the best one. Also voting or democratically or semi-democratically. Yeah, it happens, and then we build it. Basically, a couple of days of building, and then we present it to the community, and the community then the goal is for the community to maintain the place and maybe to afterwards to improve their own space without us. And talking about the towns in the village or the villages, as I said. There was a question about how big how how can you make an impact to the big city? So we start small. We go to the places that whole town is one community, and we are very interested in that. And like it's theoretically less than 1,000 people. Well, last year the smallest one 250 inhabitants, and the biggest one a little bit more than 500. And basically, what does it bring for the volunteers and for the towns? There's a big variation among the towns, since one of them are very tidy, let's say they don't have a lot of problems, but others have a lot of social issues. And we try to go to the towns that we can make the biggest impact to. That's one of our goals. And I don't know if I have time for another short video. I don't think so. So jumping.
You can see it online somewhere, right?
Yeah, it is online, sure. And of course, I'm talking about fostering communities. So how do we do that? To my opinion, first of all, we do it through enabling children, looking after their own living space. I mean, we involve them in the whole creative process. That means from the very beginning, from the idea, from drawing models and making models to building it itself. And through that they see that I can do something, and that's sort of empowering them. And for the broader community, that's another thing, that adults, first of all, they usually are very suspicious. Like, there's a bunch of young people working with children, and well, most probably there's nothing going to happen. But then they see that like 5, 6, or 7 young people with their children can achieve something in their public space. That means that maybe they can as well. And that's the message we're bringing. And of course, we're encouraging the sense of the ownership of the public space, since they perhaps never consider that it's their space and they can change it very, very easily. Yeah. And lastly, of course, there are lots of challenges. So as I mentioned, as the success of this project is people, so one of the biggest challenges is to gather those people and to make them a team, because we have like 6 people who never seen each other. So we try to talk, we try to train them to be able for them to work in the fields that they are not familiar with, because one of what the project is offering for them is a unique experience, because they travel to a rural area, and that's going outside of their social bubble, which can be sometimes shocking experience, can be sometimes very rewarding experience as well. And one of the biggest actually challenges is the approach of the communities themselves, because they think that, well, we'll go there, we'll make a camp with children, and we're gonna play a little bit. And most of the time, not most of the time, but sometimes they do have their own idea, and they imagine that our team will come and implement that idea, which is completely different. I mean, I personally had to say no, explicitly, because well, sometimes it has to be said, and then they relax and they let us work with the children, and then they are surprised. We had feedback from the communities, they said, we never imagined that kids actually would like to have this or that thing in a public space. And lastly, one of the biggest challenges is, as we are very keen on creating a public space not only for children but for the whole community as well. And we are trying to talk to our teams to encourage them to ask kids, because kids, they can do that. They can think of the whole community, but it's very hard. It's easiest to go and make a playground only for the kids. And in some cities, in some towns, it's okay, because there's a lot of public spaces for the adults, but the kids, they don't have their own space. But we encourage that, and we have a couple of good examples, and we try to build on that. So I think that's it for today. Thank you very much for the attention.